Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today I'm going to take apart the reel that I used as an example of how to go evaluate a reel that you may find at a yard sale or flea market as a used reel purchase. It's a Penn 60 reel. It's a workhorse. It's been around for about 40 or 50 years in its current format and even earlier, back to the 40s in some varying formats. I'll show you how to clean the reel, although you'll notice if you did watch the other video that a lot of it's been cleaned already, just simply to make the video a little bit shorter. But I'll show you how I do clean some parts, and I've left the handle and a side plate as an example of that. And I'll also show you how to open it up and maintain it, including a drag service on this reel. So this reel is a Penn 60, but the procedures and the pieces and the parts largely are interchangeable between the 60, the 65, the Penn Delmar 285, and the Penn Seaboy 85. So if you have any of those reels internally, they're pretty much the same. The differences being in frame, being in chrome side rails, and some of the other cosmetic pieces behind this. So let me get started. We'll take the handle off first. That's the key to everything. And the handle is held in by a little stop screw and then a handle nut. So I use an electrician's screwdriver just because it's rubber coated and it's easier. You can turn with that if you like. Also, if you have the Penn reels, you might have the Penn reel wrench that takes the nut off. I happen to use an industrial variety of that. That's an aftermarket product. It's simply a little bit thicker, it doesn't skip as much, and it's easier to grab. It also has the Penn 6.0 nut handle on the other side of that. So we'll take that handle nut off. That's followed by the handle. I left this one, as you can tell, there's quite a bit of dirt on that, so I'll show you how to go clean the chrome parts on that. And the star drag, that'll be the pieces we want to take off and for cleaning. And then we have the side plate. So the side plate is connected by 6 screws. There's 4 post screws and 2 for the reel seat. They are different, so if you do take these off, if you're performing them, know that the longer screws, the 4 of them, do go in the cross members, and that the 2 shorter ones go in the reel seat. If you reverse them, the longer ones will stick out from here, and from time to time the line may catch them. So make sure that you put them back in the proper sequence, and I'll show you that again when we go to reassemble the reel. So again, I've cleaned the chrome parts before. I had mentioned in the other video. It's fairly easy to clean them. I use a chrome polish. It's an automotive product from Turtle Wax. It's a Turtle Wax chrome polish and some 4.0 steel wool. For dirt and grime, which is on the side plate here, I use a general degreasing product. In this case, I use Purple Power, which is a great product for cleaning and degreasing. I've never had any problems with it, but there's other degreasers and general cleaning products out there that would work as well. And I use the 4.0 steel wool because the 4.0 steel wool does not mar the surface. Okay, so I have the side plates out, and we'll just take a quick peek at this. And that is a wonderful, beautiful example of what a reel should look like on the inside. This reel is probably 30 or 40 years old, and then that looks new. So I'm going to guess that this one probably sat on a boat, but didn't have a lot of service. There are nicks in that on the cross members that I did notice, crossbars there, but that could be from sinkers hitting it, hooks hitting it, who knows. But just a quick visual on this one, just to see if it's working. This is the free spool release mechanism, the connector. Underneath here there will be a carrier for your spool gear. This is your main gear down below. Just visually take a look at that. If you haven't repaired one of these before, take your cell phone out, take a picture of this so you know what you're looking at, and can put it back together if you have any questions at sometime in the future. Okay, this one looks great. This is nice. So I'll show you how to clean again. I've done that already on the other parts, just simply to make the video shorter. I use a 4.0 steel wool and a chrome polish, and it doesn't take much in terms of elbow grease, just to rub away the stuff. Now, if you have a really pitted reel, you might want to go up to a 3.0 and understand that that may have some scarring effect. But again, if you're looking to get the green and everything off of that, then that may be what you have to do. A lot of times the folks will just buy these reels to simply use. They don't care if they're beauty queens. If that's the case, go ahead and just take the assorted corrosion off. Okay, so that was it. There's not a lot of rubbing involved with this if you use that mild abrasive, and I use a paper towel to rid that. You'll also see I'm wearing white latex gloves, just the general stuff. You can find them in Home Depot, any hardware store, even dollar stores and the like, and it's just to keep the cleaning and solvents off my hands. You're never quite sure what lubrications are that we used inside of a reel. There you go, nice shiny. So I like to just keep them clean. The downside of using these is when you get the small parts, and there is a small part on the inside, you lose that dexterity in your hands, and you may have to take your gloves off to put that part back in. But in terms of just general cleanliness and safety, it's something I like to do. So here's that star drag that we're just cleaning up there. Same as the other one, comes out nice and shiny, which really tells me this reel hasn't been used much. And it was a great flea market find for a purchase. I think I mentioned in the other video I paid about $15 for it. We still have the Bakelite knob, and we have the Bakelite side plate here. I'm going to use the steel wool on that one little chrome piece there. But then I like to switch. I like to switch to a scrubby pad. In this case, it's a mild pad, and the degreaser. You can either apply directly to the side plate, or you can put it on the pad, either way. And in a very short period of time, that just takes most of the dirt and grime off of that. A lot of times it's fish scales, or in this case it might just be storage dust, but there's quite a bit of dirt and junk on the outside. So again, just don't go crazy, but it doesn't take much to clean that stuff off and restore it. So this is going to be a beautiful reel. I can see already by the way I'm cleaning this thing up in the insides, and looks like it's well worth the time and effort to go ahead and go repair this. So okay, so that's the cleaning of this reel. I mentioned I do have a parts tray. You saw me putting the screws in there. It's a great place to store the smaller pieces and parts. And go ahead and get one. It's easy. It's the bottom of a milk jug, or you can, if you have a parts tray in the description, of course, wonderful. Use a plastic container and the like. There's just it's a little bit more grime on the handle base there, so I'm going to go get that too. Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of the reel then. Show you how to take that apart, how to check the drag, service them, and put them away. As I mentioned, on the back side, there's 4 screws that hold the bridge plate on, so we're going to go take those off. These screws, there's 2 different screws here. There's one that has a short thread. Those go up top because there's a spring assembly that rides, and there's a smooth surface on those. And then on the bottom threads, it's fully threaded. So just remember that when you put those back together, if you're wondering what sequence goes where. And this reel's got what I call the jack-in-the-box, or the boing factor. There is a dog that hides under this screw. It's the anti-reverse dog. And if you're not careful, the spring that's in there will jump. So I like to open up the reel this way, push the assembly through, pick that up, and then I know what I'm looking for. And here's that screw I was talking about there. It's a very small screw, but if you just open it up kind of recklessly, that screw can fly around, and since it is so small, it's difficult to find. Again, into the parts bucket with the small pieces. This is just a beautiful reel. I haven't seen one like this in some time. This is your anti-reverse dog. This is your main gear with the drag set. Dog in there. And then this is your transition assembly, which is the spool bearing, the carrier, 2 springs that release, and then the free spool mechanism above. Push down on that carrier assembly, you can take off the transition piece. Next is the carrier and the main gear, the spool gear, and then you'll notice we have 2 springs sitting in there as well. So this is a servicing video as well. So what you want to do is just grease those parts. I use in this case, a Penn reel grease for just about everything I do. Multi-purpose greases are out there. Any one of them will service you well. Don't use axle grease. I've seen that in a couple of these. I've seen Vaseline in some of these. You know, why short step it? The grease just isn't that costly, and Vaseline washes away very quickly, and axle grease tends to take all the grit and grime and hold it. So try and find a grease specifically designed for that. Okay, I'm back to my steel wool, and I'm just cleaning up the carrier piece a little bit here. I'm going to put some lube on that. And I'm going to check the spool gear and make sure that everything's in order there, that there's nothing clogging the teeth. There's not. This is nice and clean. All the teeth are in place, so there's no skips going on there. If there were, if your reel is a little bit dirtier, use a wire brush and simply just brush out the cavities of that gear. But this one, again, this reel, I'm quite surprised, quite honestly, with how good it looks. So put that back together, hold it aside, and then we'll get to the main gear assembly. The main gear assembly has the collar, which the star drag presses on to compress your drags and hold them. And then it's a series of drags and washers. There's 7 in all. There's a collar, followed by a series of fabric washers and a series of metal washers. I notice that these are probably just compressed, probably from age. I would think that the grease is probably fallen out on them. They are flexible, so I'm just going to just pull these off right now. If you have any difficulty taking the drags off, you could use a utility knife to separate them. Okay, so we have fabric. I left the one in the main drag. You can take that out if you needed to. This one is in good shape, so I'm just going to leave it there. There is a little collar that it rides on, but if you wanted to take it out, a centering pin, a toothpick, or something else could pull that out pretty easily. So fabric, metal, fabric, eared, fabric, metal, collar. That's the sequence that these go in. And when I do these, since the drags are okay, but the greasing is dried up on it a little bit, I like to take that steel wool again and just clean the metal pieces. As we know, you saw that they stuck a little bit to these, so there's just some dried grease on these. We'll take those and put them aside. Now, drags are available for this reel. They can be ordered from Penn Parts as well as other suppliers if you needed them. They're probably about $1 a piece, so a good investment to keep the reel working if you needed them. Okay, so that's pretty much taking care of the metal surfaces here. And then we'll reassemble the drags after I clean that last one. And again, you can see there's not a lot of effort to clean these up, so it's telling you that basically the products that I'm telling you about work. Okay, then the last piece here, nice and shiny. Okay, so we're back to that. So when I reassemble drags, I use a universal reel drag grease. This one happens to be Cowell's drag grease. It's a little bit thicker, and I just make sure that there's a little bit of grease on both sides. Now, I've noticed as I repaired reels over the years, and I've been doing it over 20 years now, the number one failure in a reel seems to be no lubrication, and surprisingly, the number two failure seems to be too much lubrication. So be generous, but don't be over enthusiastic in the way that you're putting that together. Okay, so the fabric went down, metal one, put the fabric in, going to grease up another one. This time the middle washer for the drags is the eared washer, and as you can see, I'm just putting a light one. When you start turning the drags, it's going to spread that across. But I'll put the metal one. Now the metal one's got the ears in it. That's kind of a lock washer, and there's a little insert that you can see in the carrier assembly itself. Those ears sit in there. Last of the fabrics. Last of the metal. Inside you only have to butter the one side, so to speak, because the other side is just where your collar is going to go. Okay, so we've reinstalled the drags. The collar washer is next, and then the ferrule goes on top of that, which again the star washer will do there. If you're cleaning the reel, make sure that you go inside that one. I use a Q-tip to get in there and clean those difficult to reach areas. And we're done with the main drive assembly. So we've got our springs there. They come out, they sit in a little recess. Again, this is where some of the small parts are a little bit more difficult to grab with those latex gloves. So I'm going to start taking this off at this point because the cleaning of that is done. So we've got the reassembly about to begin. So we take the carrier first, and on that gear, the slotted side of the gear stays outside. I've seen a couple of reels come back and the guy's telling me that the spool doesn't turn. I get inside it and they've had the gear on backwards. Press that down, and then you can reinsert the transition piece. Now we're set for that. And this is, I guess, the magic time, right? How does that little dog assembly work, especially with that spring? How do you get that back in? So you take the completed bridge assembly that you have and you insert it in the hole. You press down to hold that spool gear, turn it halfway, and then you insert one of the fully threaded screws, which goes on the bottom plate, into the left side part of the assembly. Taking out the dog and the spring right now from my parts holder. Imagine doing this with those latex gloves, right? Alright, so then the dog goes in. It sits over the screw. We've got a little kind of a hole there, and that's where the spring goes on the top. Be careful when you're doing that, when you load that spring. If you don't have that thing resting against this back wall, it's going to shoot off and you're going to spend some time searching for it again. Once that's in, continue the rotation on the bridge assembly until you lock that screw in. And then a couple of tights. Don't tighten it all the way down yet. Okay, the ones that have the partially threaded, the smooth top, those belong on the springs. They belong on the top of the bridge assembly. So we'll put both of those together. And I go opposite. I go sort of like the way you would put a spare tire on. Bottom, top, bottom, and then reverse top, just to get these screws started. Sometimes there is an alignment problem. These tend to twist a little bit, so make sure that you work it that way. And again, partially tightened until you get that last screw, then you can tighten them all down. The key here is snug them up. Don't go crazy, don't over tighten. Over tighten, you can crack these plates, and if you crack the plate, the reel's not worth repairing. Okay, so now I'm tightening all of those. Before I reassemble, I turn the reel to make sure it's working, and sure enough it has, doing that. And then one more lubrication piece I do before I close this reel up is I put a little bit of lubrication on that transition assembly. So we've got this all lubed up. Before I reassemble the handle piece, I do put a dot of glue on the pinion gear. Oil. I use Real-X as my oil of choice. There are other oils out there. Lots of them will work. Some of you know that you have a Penn oil. There's another, any kind of machine oil will do. 3-in-1 oil will do. I like the Lube-X, or the Real-X, so I stay with that. Okay, and then on this side, I just generally put a little dab on the spool. And before I complete this, oh, look at that, it's beautiful here too. On the bearing side, non-drive side, there is a bearing that gets a little lubrication here, and sometimes around that clicker is fine. Okay, so that clicker rides on the teeth on the spool. That's the side that goes in there, and then we just grab this and put that back on, seating that in that spool gear rig. Okay, then we're back to the parts bucket here to grab our pieces. Again, I mentioned there's two size screws. You got 4 that are long, they go in the posts, and you have 2 that are short, they go in the reel seat. And just like that other one, I go side to side and bottom to make sure these are all seated properly. That's the right side. And down below. And that's the shorter screw. There's two of those. They go on the bottom wheel seat. Sometimes you need to just push that wheel seat a little bit one way or another to align the holes. Also, one of the tools that I have in my shop that I use more than ever is a centering pin. This just happens to be from an old awl, but well worth it in terms of a general utility tool. Okay, so then last of the two side plate screws. And then we'll put the star drag on, put the handle on, and this reel will be ready to go fishing and look a whole lot better than it did when I picked it up from the flea market. Okay, so on the star drag, there's two sides to it, obviously. The one that has the number on it, the part number, in this case 1060, belongs to the rear. It's just cosmetic. It doesn't matter which side you put it on, but it does belong to the rear of the reel. And then I generally hold that pinion while I turn that star nut to completion. Sometimes they're a little difficult because of the way that it's threaded. And then we put the handle back on. Nice, clean, shiny handle that we just did here. Handle nut. Now the handle nut's got a bunch of ridges in it. One of them needs to line up with the small hole for the screw. So you can tighten, but don't over tighten. You'll break that screw off in the pinion gear and call it a waste. And then finally the little stop nut for your handle nut. And then of course I got a little bit of grease and all that I've done. So what I do is I just grab my paper towel there, clean it all up. And what a difference it makes. 20 minutes, a little knowledge, and look at that reel go. It's a beautiful reel. And a flea market find is ready to go fishing, or if you're in the resale business, ready to sell. Okay, so I hope that helps. I hope that's given you some confidence. Again, it works on whether it's the Model 60, the 65, the 285, or the 85. All those internal parts are essentially the same, unless you're dealing with an older reel where it has a flat spring instead of the coil spring. Then everything else is identical, including the drag service. Again, this is Dennis, Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching. I hope it's been valuable to you.